Today we're going to look at a passage, or two passages actually, from the Gospel of John. Take a look at the class website and you'll see a link there that lays out the seven discourses and seven signs in the Gospel of John. It turns out that the Gospel of John, I've said this before, but it's laid out very differently than the Synoptic Gospels, follows a very different outline. In particular, there are seven long discourses. These are narrative sections that contain many words of Jesus and his interactions with people, mostly his disciples, but some other people as well. And then there are seven signs or miracles that take place. And it turns out that these signs and miracles are related to one another. They come in pairs. And the document on the class website lays that out for you. The discourse and the sign we're going to look at that are related to one another are the Samaritan woman at the well that talks about living water. That's the discourse. And then the sign also deals with water. It's the healing of the man at the pool in John chapter 5. So we're going to be looking at this from the standpoint of reader response criticism. And I'm actually going to say less, I'm going to give you less of an introduction than I do for most other reading methods, because I want to leave more time for discussion. Because what we're talking about with reader response criticism concentrates on the reader and the reading process as a way of determining the meaning of the text. So in some ways, the less I tell you about the text, the more free you are, I hope, to interact with the text and bring your own response to the text. You may have read this passage or these passages before, or you may not have, but even if you have read them before and you're familiar with them, I want you to try to approach them as though this were the first time you've read these passages. In reader response criticism, the idea is that the reader brings meaning to the text, and in some sense, without the reader, the text itself doesn't even exist. So let me read just a couple of passages. I'm not going to read the whole of either the discourse or the miracle, the sign. But first, from the story of the woman at the well. Jesus is by the well, and a Samaritan woman came to draw water. This is chapter 4, verse 7 of John. The Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" And then in parentheses, the author explains, Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket, the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well, and with his sons and his flocks drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." Right now I'm going to skip over to chapter 5, and this is the sign of this is about the man who is healed by the pool of Siloam. One man was there, this is chapter 5, verse 3. I'll start at the beginning of the verse. "In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to him, 'Do you want to be made well?' The sick man answered him, 'Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me.' Jesus said to him, 'Stand up, take your mat, and walk.' At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now that day was a Sabbath, a day on which Jews are not supposed to do any work at all." before I let you go, I also want to read a little bit from this poem that I've posted. It's called "My Letter to the Giant Indian Working at the Convenience Store in Shiprock, New Mexico." This is written by a well-known poet. He's a former poet laureate of Texas, and he's published several books and so forth. And I picked this poem because it also talks about cultural differences, much the same as the story of the woman at the well is a story about cultural differences, among other things. Jesus is a Jew and she is a Samaritan. I'm just going to read the first few lines of the poem, and I want you to think. I'm pretty sure that no one in here has probably read this poem before, so I want you to start by practicing on this poem. How do you respond as a reader to this poem? And then take your responses to the poem and try to transfer it over as you read the story of the woman at the well and the story of the man who's healed by the pool of Siloam. Okay, here's the poem. Mr. Giant Indian, sure you think you're working from a position of strength, but you are stuck behind a counter loaded with impulse items, energy drinks and old payday bars and highway maps. Sure, you're huge and you block out the sun, and sure, everyone in line ahead of me and behind me might be as red-skinned as you are, and you are giving me a "you gotta feel uncomfortable here, white boy" look. But here's the bottom line. I'm getting in my car and I'm driving away. I can drive away, and you cannot. Now, I think I'm going to leave it there. You can read the rest of the poem. So here's what I would like you to ask yourself when you break into groups. You'll notice that I have a whole lot more questions for this passage or these passages than I usually do. And so you have a lot more that you can talk about, a lot more to consider. I want you to start. I want everybody to at least look at the question about the poem and how you react to the poem, which is about ethnic and cultural differences, and then see what similarities you can find and differences perhaps between this poem and the story of the woman at the well. And then you can go on to talk about type scenes of women, meetings at wells in the Bible, and take it from there. I don't think I'm going to say anything else. I'm going to let you take some extra time in class to discuss all these different discussion questions. So that's it.